we get a little more adventurous with composition and song structure and layering, I guess you could say. So it's prog in that respect, but it's not prog in the sense of there's a 13-minute guitar and keyboard duel, you know? We're not capital P prog.
Mark of Black Sites, how are you doing today? Because the countdown is on. The Promised Land is coming. It's coming soon, September 6th. How are you feeling right now?
Feeling all right. Feeling good about it. I've actually been working on new material since then. So there's quite a lot of things going on at the same time. Yeah. But really stoked about the record. I thought it turned out really fantastic. We're actually dropping a new track tomorrow, which will already be out by the time people see this.
Yes, it will.
No, the reactions so far have been great, and I can't wait for people to hear the whole thing.
Yeah. No, I've heard the whole thing obviously already, and I will agree with you. I think this is a really cool album, and I know that you've watched at least a few of my interviews before, so you know I don't always say that. It's a really cool album, and you're already working on the next one. Let's be honest. I don't think you're a guy that can stop working or writing, because this is the 4th album in 7 years with a 3-year pandemic in the middle. Your pace as a band is pretty good.
Yeah, I don't think I can stop either. I thought about it, and you're probably right. In a weird way, the pandemic helped, because we could kind of there was nothing else to do, so it's like, well, right. Let's write some stuff. And that was probably actually the most productive period we had with that lineup at the time. Mm-hmm. But no, I'm always writing. The band, we've been through a lot. There's been a lot of lineup changes in the band, but I'm always the dude bringing in the songs, and there's always more of it. So yeah, I just keep rolling with it.
Yeah. All right. Now, one of the cool things about your sound, that's not necessarily new to this album. That was in the previous album, that case as well. That's when I discovered your band. Is when you push play, from the get-go, everything sounds familiar, but also new and unique. And that's because you bring a ton of different influences from a ton of different areas together. And somehow that just, the puzzle pieces fit really well. But it's also kind of like a superpower that, people that, whether they like, grunge music, alternative rock, or wobble, and anything in between, they'll pick up on something that they like or that's familiar to them. Is all of that purely organic? Is that just as simple as you like too many different things? Or is there some thought in that to create this particular unique band sound or brand by this time, if you will?
That is a really interesting way to look at it. Speaking for myself and, being the guy who started the band, it was organic. It is organic. I listen to a lot of different stuff. I'm a 90s kid. I'm not old enough to have been around for new wave of British heavy metal or early thrash. I wasn't there. Yeah. But I went back and discovered that. I went back to Blue Oyster Cult. I went back to Black Sabbath, Thin Lizzy, and then you bring that through. Metallica, Voivod is a big one for us as far as sound. Then you get into 90s and 2000s stuff, Baroness, Hammers of Misfortune, proggier bands like that. And back to 80s stuff, Queensryche, Fate's Warning, I could go on and on, and I am. But the point is, the concept was for a band to embrace all of that. Yeah. And it's not preconceived except for the limitations. There's boundaries where we didn't want to be an extreme band. You'll notice there's not a lot of double bass stuff or blast beats or harsh vocals on our albums, maybe on the first one, but I play in another band called Bear Mace, which does have pretty firmly drawn boundaries. It's a death metal band of a certain sound in a certain era, and that's cool too. But with Black Sites, it was cool to have a space to be a little more adventurous and bring in all these different influences. And it just, at this point, 4 albums in, I think we just kind of sound like us.
So some of the bands that you mentioned will always be described as a prog and then, insert genre, like take Voivod. Nobody's ever going to say, oh, Voivod is a thrash band or whatever. It's always like it's a proggy thrash band, stuff like that. That's starting to happen with you as well. And there's definitely that adventurous side to it. But prog is also like such a weird label and can be almost like a prison, because when you hear the word prog should be adventurous and there should be like no lines in the sand. But there's so many prog bands that sound very similar or all try to sound like Dream Theater. You can sometimes be shackled by oh, you have to sound like this if you're a prog band. To me, if I project, it sounds like Black Sites overcomes those label shackles, if you will, by really focusing on the song first and foremost. Is that a fair statement? Where a lot of prog albums is like, from start to finish, it's one kind of flowing journey. But Promised Land is first and foremost a collection of songs that can stand on their own if it has to happen.
I think that's totally fair, and it's awesome to hear you say that. It's awesome that you picked up on that. I don't think I have the attention span to write like a concept album, to put something that's got to run for the whole 50 minutes or whatever. I don't think I have the brain to do that. But like you said, prog metal, especially prog anything, but especially prog metal, has these very narrow definitions now, these parameters where it's like, it's got to be Dream Theater, it's got to be off time, it's got to be mathematical, the songs all have to be 20 minutes long. And that's certainly one aspect of it. I can't play or sing like that. Some dudes in the band can. Ryan, our guitar player, huge John Petrucci fan. He could shred all day. He's into that stuff, and some of the guys are. But when it comes to writing, I look at prog more as, I like prog bands that were more song based. Even going back to something like Pink Floyd, who were incredibly progressive, but those are songs. Some of them are conceptual, some of them are part of, like, The Wall isn't song based, but parts of it are. Mm-hmm. And I've always been a fan of just good songs, memorable hooks and riffs, and just solid ideas. And I think we build from that, but then we get a little more adventurous with composition and song structure and layering, I guess you could say. So it's prog in that respect, but it's not prog in the sense of there's a 13-minute guitar and keyboard duel,
Right.
We're not capital P prog.
You did have the attention span to write one longer song, the title track. Not as long as the average, prog stereotypical song, maybe. But significant, like twice the length of the average song on the album. A different muscle, though, like to write a song that is longer, that stays interesting, versus a short song that cuts out all or trims all the fat, if you will. What's that like for you as a writer? Like, do most of your songs start a little longer and you trim them down, or was this particular song, was that more of a challenge for you to be out of your comfort zone?
I wouldn't say that we set out to trim fat when we write songs. We don't set out to write short songs. When I was saying earlier that we usually don't start with any preconceived notions, I did have a preconceived notion that I wanted to write a 12-minute song. Like, that was the idea going in, because I was thinking about 70s bands that would do a song that would take up a side of a record, and bands like Marillion, and even I mentioned Voivod, they have a song called Jack Luminous that's 15 minutes long or something. I wanted to see what our band and our ingredients would sound like taken to that extreme. And it was a challenge, man. It's still kind of separate sections, but we found a way to like weave themes and different ideas through it that repeat, so it has context. Compositionally, I really like a lot of what's going on there. I think there's parts that are kind of foreshadowed at the beginning that follow through at the end. The lyrics turned out pretty cool. That's a little different for us. It was a challenge, but I really like how that turned out. Especially, I mean, not to spoil it if this interview comes out before the record's out, but there's piano on that song. There's like choir vocals. We just got ridiculous with it. It's like our Bohemian Rhapsody, I guess.
The main band is 3 people. That will be a tough one to play live with just 3 people. So is part of what you're doing now working on new material? Is that also working on turning what's on the record into something 3 people can bring live?
So we're not really a trio. We're a 4-piece band, except that the bass players keep quitting in between albums. So, and I'm totally serious. We had a bass player who quit the day we started rehearsing for Untrue, the last record.
Yeah.
And we had a different bass player who was with us when we started recording The Promised Land. And Greg, actually, our guitar player's brother, was in the band, and timing-wise, he just couldn't make it work.
Right.
So I find myself in this position where I'm, playing a little bit of bass on these records now, which is cool. I like it. But to answer your question, if we do play live, there will be a 4-piece band.
Yeah.
There will absolutely. We can't do it as a trio. We're not a trio. We're a 2-guitar band with a bass player and a drummer. So there will be 4 people if we play live.
Yeah, but absolutely. Even then, there's some songs that still will require some rethinking, if you will, unless all of a sudden somebody's going to play piano with one hand as well, as an example.
Yeah, I hadn't thought that far ahead yet.
Okay, we'll get there at the right time.
I'm still trying to figure out the bass player thing first.
That makes sense.
If we did the title track live, I mean, there's bands going out there now that just run tracks on everything. They pre-recorded stuff. I don't want to do that. I'm old school. I find that really lame when bands just run tapes live. But that's an option. It could potentially be played live by someone in the band. We have a few guys who can play piano a little if we brought it with us. It could be done, but we've run into that before. We have songs on the other albums. We've never been a band that's played a lot live. I think we probably have more albums than shows we've done at this point. But it's always been more about the recordings, and it's like, oh, we'll put these 6 tracks of guitar here because it sounds cool. And you don't really think about the live show till later, because it's not, the important part is getting the albums out there. The recordings are forever,
Yeah.
So we've always figured it out eventually, and I'm sure we will again. I'm not too worried about it.
The cool thing about your sound is because it is still, within the realm of, heavy metal, it's eclectic, right? We already said that before. There's a lot of influences in there. Take a song like, Dread Tomorrow. I kind of felt like sounds like a 90s alternative rock band playing a power metal song, and because it gives me as much Hammerfall and Grand Magus as some post grunge bands and whatnot. But it also means that you can not only adjust your set for a specific audience, but you can play with people in all these different areas. You can play with prog bands. You can play with traditional heavy metal bands. You can play with a thrash band, no problem. You can play with like more groove and more modern metal bands as well. Would that impact a set that you would build? Would you cater to that, or are you more like, I'm going to give you the Black Sites experience no matter who you are?
I've always looked at it as just putting out the best 45 minutes of Black Sites that you could come up with, the most representative thing of us. The last show we did, I remember it was all, I guess, doom bands or sludgy or stoner type bands, and we can hang with that as well.
Yeah.
We have hints of that, but we're not going to play a whole set of slow songs. We're not going to do a whole set of doom. That's not fun for us. We wanted, we played fast stuff that night, proggy stuff, simple stuff, new stuff, old stuff. The set list is just decided by what we feel like doing and what we think will be the most representative of where we're at.
You've discovered some new things to do. There are some new sounds on this album. You also mentioned that you're already working on what's next. So are you already seeing sort of evolution? Are there certain elements in this album that we're just going to see more of in the future?
So I can't say a whole lot about the new stuff. What I will say is it's an evolution from this. It's not going deeper into like the long song thing. There's not 20-minute songs or 30-minute songs. If anything, I would say it's more focused on atmosphere in a weird way. It's a little more maybe vocal based, more based around hooks. There are still riffs. It's darker. It's a darker record, I would say. But it's the thing with Black Sites is there's a range of things we can do. We could do anything, but realistically, there's a range that we operate within, and this is exploring certain areas of that. Mm-hmm. And it's just the next step. It's a reaction to the Promised Land as well. Recording 7 long ass songs. After that, you're like, maybe I'll do. It's like Metallica after And Justice for All. It's like maybe we don't want to do 8 really long songs again. Maybe we'll do 12 short ones instead. So it's kind of that line of thinking, and I would call it a little more refined, a little more song based. I'm working on layering and texturing a little bit more as far as the production goes and the recording of it. So that's probably all I could say to describe it, and that's probably not helpful at all. But that's at the point that it's at now. That's where it's headed.
Lots of stuff to look forward to. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about this album, this cool new album that's come out. Super excited for all the fans to discover what you have in store for them. It's a really strong record, and I think it'll do very well for you guys. Thank you so much for your time, man.
Thank you for having me on, man. This has been fantastic. Great talking to you.
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.